Kasheme, conscious listening.
My early musical experiences that I can remember are one, my mother singing around the house while she was cleaning house, singing church songs, humming them. I remember also visiting the South, staying with my grandfolks in the southern part, Virginia, in the United States, and attending church, Baptist church, choirs singing gospel music with lots of enthusiasm, clapping the hands, rocking side to side, singing with lots of exuberance. I do remember R&B music, rock and roll music on the radio later on, especially Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers and the Beatles. Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand. Fats Domino, Blueberry Hill. Little Richard, James Brown, the Isley Brothers, and visiting choirs from the South. We'd visit our high school in the North and present like Negro spirituals from black colleges. I had a thing about Negro spirituals. It's something very warm about them. Oscar Peterson, Andre Previn, and Earl Garner was my early pianists who I experienced only through their recording. My first live music experience outside of public school was the Isley Brothers singing at a nightclub in New Jersey. My later impacting musical experiences is trance, hearing music in an altered state of a timeless sound current that I later discovered is actually documented in yoga journals as the eternal cosmic sound that is not heard with the ears but is experienced through the cerebral cortex as a non-physical sound, and that it is a perfect sound listening and hearing experience for yogis and yoginis who want to lift their consciousness out of this separate personal sense of being into the universal eternal sense of being. And it's called nadam in Sanskrit language. In the Bible, it's called the Word. And essentially, it's an eternal pulsation of the field, the pranic field, that can be experienced everywhere in the universe. Even people who are diagnosed as deaf can have this inner hearing experience because it doesn't depend on the physical ears. My experience of it was the sound of multiple layers of brass instruments weaving this glorious pad of eternal, all-pervading musical presence. So it was an internal sound bath that altered the course of my musical expression and composition. This happened in 1974, but the teaching that comes from this experience is that there is no past or future, and that the best way to talk about it as though it is going on now. It's a now experience called nadam. I would say that was one of the deepest mind shifting experiences, because it shifted my awareness out of thinking that the third and fourth dimension was the primary zone where we live to another zone, which might be called the fifth dimension, or I would call the vertical field, which is very present, continuous present time. It doesn't have a future or a past. It's continuous here and now. And this kind of music is what I try to give my impression of when I perform. And it's the intention behind my music to guide the listener's sense of audio awareness to a place where they spontaneously feel an eternalness about themselves, and to feel a sense that space is unlimited and that the whole universe is going on right now. There's no future or past in the vertical field. When we use these five senses, we can participate in the perception of past and future and separation. But this musical experience that I had or didn't have, because it didn't happen, there is no past for it to have happened in. But this music somehow supports consciousness, cosmic memory, to remember that there's a oneness here, that consciousness is eternal. And consciousness can have an experience of its eternalness by listening to certain kinds of music, drone music, omnispatial music, spontaneous music, channeled music, music that doesn't come from the future or the past, but is revealed in the moment.
If it looks silly, that's just too bad. Just 7 days and watch what happens. Om Shanti 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 Om.
The zither is the instrument that I travel with. It's a modified auto harp, or the auto harp is a modified zither, but I call it the zither. I first saw the zither in Greenwich Village when I used to do stand-up comedy, and comedians would be sandwiched in between folk singers. And sometimes these folk singers would be Kentucky bluegrass ensembles. And that consisted of sometimes a violin, bass player, guitar, drummer, and an auto harp player. And that was my first visual exposure to the auto harp, and it was being treated very gently because it was used for general folk music. But the instrument looked very interesting. Maybe I was vibing on it intuitively and didn't realize I would have a future with it. Fast forward to about 6 years later, I'm living in Queens, New York. I'm married at the time, and I'm playing music with a jazz rock band, playing piano music. And I also play guitar, but I wasn't using it on my gigs. So at one particular time, I felt I needed some extra cash for whatever reason, extra money. And my guitar, which wasn't being used, I decided to go into town in Queens and pawn it at a pawn store. And as I was going into the store, I saw this instrument, the auto harp, the zither, in the window, and I said, there's that instrument again. I get into the store, the clerk looks at the guitar that I want to sell, which I think is worth about $175 US. The clerk says, the best I can do is give you $25 for that. And I didn't feel inspired to sell the guitar for that low of a price. And this voice, a very clear voice in my head, suggested me not to sell the guitar or take money, but to swap it, exchange it for that auto harp in the window. And it was such a clear and loving suggestion that I wanted to see where this would go. So I swapped it. I exchanged it, made a deal. I left with the auto harp and $5 and began experimenting with different tunings on the instrument and different ways of playing it till I developed a vocabulary for this instrument, an improvisational vocabulary, and eventually playing on the sidewalks and in the plazas and parks of Brooklyn and New York. And the instrument kept unfolding until I had enough of a mastery of this original sound to present full-length concerts for expos, meditation and yoga centers in New York. So the zither seemed to be connected to my being a channel for this new emotional music. I say new emotional, the motion of knowing that I am eternal and the emotion of knowing that I'm in an eternalness. This very different from the emotion in rock and roll music or romantic music.
As your cosmic advisor and attorney, I invite you to dare to upload your smile onto your face and to bring your smile forward. And try it for 7 days. And notice, you don't have to take written notes, just notice synchronicities. At least 10% of every day, tithing your smile. And it's not just giving away your smile, it's allowing your smile to be a portal through which your higher inheritance can pour into your private stash. Om Shanti.
First, smile. 2, start experimenting with it if you haven't already, to find your inner voice, how to recognize it, and how to experiment with following it, how to give space to your inner voice, like I gave space to the inner voice that guided me with the zither. That this inner voice, I believe, can help us prevent taking unnecessary paths in our life. I think of that voice, that inner voice, their inner guidance has a bigger picture, has a sense of the bigger picture for us. And that can help us to evolve in a more efficient way. If we don't use it, there's trial and error. We can evolve by trial and error. But learning how to recognize the inner voice, and the one way I suggest someone to experiment with it is to go to a park and stand at the entrance of the park on a day when you have just free time, and just ask yourself, which path should I take into this park? And just listen to what I think I hear on the edge of my imagination. And that's how we develop. Listen to what we think we hear, follow it, and see what happens. The voice says, go into the pond over there and go near the pond and sit for 10 minutes. You might hear something you think that's silly. You just go see what happens if you do what you think is silly. And if nothing happens, listen to the voice again. It might say, it's time to get on the bus and go downtown. Then you get these and you think, did I really hear that? And if you got the time, get on the bus and go downtown. And just observe what occurs when I step out of the path of my rational thinking mind and follow this, what I think is the inner voice. And my understanding is that the more we follow what we think we hear, the clearer we start hearing it. And also, we start trusting this voice when we notice what happens when we take the alternative path in our daily life and watch what happens. Who do we meet? What ideas come up? How much relaxation happens? So we learn to trust that this inner voice is a valid resource for guidance on a daily, moment-to-moment basis. Learning how to hear it, learning how to trust it, the inner voice. I would say that was the biggest advice. Instead of me giving you more and more advice, the major advice is go into your inner advisor. Check in with your inner advisor and learn how to identify it. Sometimes it can be done through spontaneous writing faster than you can think on pad or pencil. And 3 or 4 pages. There are some teachers who teach this, that this is a way of getting in touch with your higher guidance. Write faster than you can think. So you want to get out of the thinking mind's idea of what you should be doing and listen to a higher intelligence that can come through if we write faster than we can think.
I say, let your face be the one more smile that the world gets to experience today. Any questions? And 10, and hold a smile. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7,